Let us take a non-hysterical look at some of these Joe Biden cabinet appointments. It's really interesting. Ben Rhodes. You remember Ben Rhodes? He was the Obama guy who basically went to the New York Times and bragged that they had sold the horrific Iran deal because the press was so stupid. They were so young, they didn't know anything, that they were coming to them to explain things to them, as opposed to the old-timey reporters who actually knew a lot about foreign policy and would not have been conned. And so Rhodes was talking about how he had conned the press, and the New York Times and all the press was saying, wow, that was really good. Good job, Ben. That was really amazing. That was really amazing the way you made fools of us and got past us. It was really amazing. Well, Ben Rhodes used to call the typical foreign policy establishment, he used to call them the blob. And what he meant by that is that they were the people, they just kind of all believed in the same liberal world order, and they all knew this was the case, and they all knew it was true, and it was just, that's the way they move forward. And the blob basically is back. It's not so much the swamp in this case as the blob. It really is. It's these people who know what they know. When I was in Afghanistan, I always love starting this story with when I was in Afghanistan, because it makes me sound like Dr. Watson from the Sherlock Holmes story. When I was in Afghanistan, I was in Afghanistan for a week, but still, while I was there, I was traveling with a lot of State Department guys. And State Department guys, I've met them elsewhere too, and they are almost every one of them exceptionally intelligent, exceptionally well-read, exceptionally sophisticated, nice people. But a lot of times, the stuff that comes out of their mouth, it's really hard to believe, and it is the result of being surrounded by the blob. It's the result of being surrounded by people who agree with them. I've had people from the State Department tell me how evil it was that Israel bombed Saddam Hussein's nuclear plant because it was against international law. And I just said, I didn't lose a day's night's sleep over that. It was like he could have just kept bombing as far as I was concerned. And I was talking to this guy in Afghanistan, and he was talking about the expertise that was required and all this stuff. And I said to him, I'm old enough to remember, and I said this because he was about my age, I said, I'm old enough to remember when people like you were saying that the Soviet Union was the future, that they had seen the future and it works, that socialism, communism was the way we were all going to go. And I said, and there were guys raking their lawn out in Dubuque who had high school educations who were going, I don't know much, but those commies, they're bad guys. And I said, they turned out to be right, and you guys turned out to be wrong. I've never seen somebody's face just go, he was a lovely guy, but his face just went utterly blank. I mean, it was like he could not hear the idea that sometimes common sense beats this expertise, especially among the blob. So, let me just start with this. The one thing that really got me about these appointments came from David Axelrod, the classic Democrat hack kind of. This is cut 6, him talking about Joe Biden's cabinet appointments.
Biden is following through on the pledge that he made as a candidate. He promised the most diverse cabinet in history. He's delivering that. Janet Yellen, the first Treasury Secretary of the United States in the history of the Republic. Avril Haines over as the DNI. That's historic as well. But I think we shouldn't lose in the Mayorkas, the new DHS secretary, we should point out, is a Cuban American immigrant, also historic and symbolically important.
I heard this and I inwardly groaned, and I hope America will inwardly groan. It seems to me that for 4 years, at least in the White House, we got beyond identity politics. Who cares? Who cares where these guys come from when you say they're diverse and they all believe in the same things, such that even Ben Rhodes called them the blob. You're still the blob if you're black or a woman or whatever. It's just an amazing thing that we're back to this tired, wearisome, it's historic. It's historic because, she's a woman. Oh my goodness. Look how brown that person is. They don't ask, what do they believe? Well, they believe in the same old things. I mean, the worst of it is, what are we going to see? We're going to see multilateralism. Everything has to be negotiated. If we are going to lead, if America is going to lead, we have to do it through the UN. And, that's where we've seen this already. We know it's ridiculous. Also, I mean, the worst of it is John Kerry. John Kerry is now the climate czar, okay? And here, John Kerry has a philosophy. This is cut 25.
You haven't got the knack of being idly rich. You see, you should do like me, just snooze and dream, dream and snooze. The pleasures are unlimited.
No, that was John Kerry before he was rescued from Gilligan's Island. But the bad thing about Kerry, first of all, Kerry has never made a good deal with anybody. He's never negotiated a good deal with anybody. And of course, he's going to bring us back into the Paris Climate Accord. It's not going to be ratified if we hold the Senate. It's not going to be an actual treaty. It's just going to be this kind of loose agreement. But what it does is it just gives China tremendous power. It gives China, all it does is it says to us, we have to meet certain standards, certain environmental standards, and China has to meet them someday. You know, the Chinese love doing stuff someday. You know, the Chinese are guys spewing, pollutants into the air where we keep cleaning things up and getting cleaner and cleaner. So this is going to be like, a genuine problem. And the idea that this climate change, Joseph Curl, writing at the Daily Wire, points out that Kerry owns a beachfront home in Martha's Vineyard. He paid almost $12 million for it. It's 18.5 acres. So he don't believe in climate change. He doesn't believe in the climate crisis. It's just the hysteria that he is selling, that they're all selling because they know it gets people crazy. They know they can get people to support bigger government, all these plans, all this power for the blob. That's what they're looking for, power to the blob. Then there's the guy, Tony Blinken, and Jack Sullivan, I can't remember. Blinken is going to be Secretary of State. Sullivan is going to be the National Security Advisor. Blinken's best moment, actually, was when Obama didn't do anything. Remember the red line in Syria where he said if Assad uses chemical weapons, that'll be a red line, and then he did, and we didn't do anything. That was his best moment. Blinken said superpowers don't bluff. And he was a little bit more aggressive in Syria than Obama was. But he was still part of this idiotic Iran deal, which really was a bad thing. This is cut 13, Blinken on the Iran deal.
If you ask the Israeli military or intelligence community today whether we should pull out of the deal, you will get a resounding no. And in fact, many of them have acknowledged to us, some will actually say this publicly, others won't, that it has removed a significant concern for them, at least far into the future. Everything we've seen and our intelligence community has seen and has said publicly is that the overwhelming bulk of the proceeds that they've managed to get back have gone into the economy, not to Hezbollah. Not to Hezbollah.
So we've got these clowns back. It's going to be, once again, there'll be some good stuff from it. There will. We should heal our relationships with Europe. I know it was fun to watch Trump push them around, and they deserve to be pushed around, and they should have put in more money in NATO. They should have lived up to their agreements. But we also need to act in concert with them against China. We need to act in concert with the Pacific nations against China. Those things are important. Trump alienated people there. He did the right things, but sometimes he did them in such ways that they broke alliances that we need. USA Today has a piece that says even Trump's critics say he got some things right. And it's packed with anti-Trump rhetoric. It's packed with, Trump did this and he was terrible with this. But in between, so I just lifted out some of the things that he said in between the anti-Trump rhetoric, because it's important as they bring the blob back in. They're bringing the blob back in, but they're not bringing it into the world the blob left, okay? They're not bringing the blob back into the pre-Trump world. Trump has changed things. So here's from USA Today. Some foreign policy experts, ex-diplomats, and even Trump's harshest opponents concede that for all of his America First nationalism, God, I hate that, and his unorthodox style, Trump's various overseas initiatives have produced limited qualified successes. Everything in this article is put like that. Limited, qualified, but a success. Streamlining the way American hostage cases are handled and improving communications with families is one example. NATO Secretary General, now I'm cutting out all the stuff about how evil he was and how he was orange and he was bad and he was a bad orange person. But in between that, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has credited Trump's relentless complaints about NATO with having an impact. The Europeans did start to put more money into NATO. Trump presided over historic, quote unquote, normalization agreements signed between some Arab states and Israel. We can, quote, we can fault Trump for mismanaging the public relations around it. We can question his motivations, says Shira Efron, a Tel Aviv-based policy advisor for the Israel Policy Forum, but it is possible these agreements could be the start of something positive for the Middle East, like the end to people killing each other all the time. It goes on and on. The fact that he made our policy tougher on China, that he alerted people like Joe Biden who've been sitting around going, come on, man, China's not a threat. They're good people. He has changed everything. So the blob comes into the world that Donald Trump made. If they blow up the peace arrangements in the Middle East, if they become too friendly with China, the voters are going to tell them about it. It is a different world. So if we win at least one seat in Georgia, it won't be a nightmare. If we don't, it could well be, because that's going to give an open door to the left to come in and control Joe Biden. Before you go, one last thing. Hit the subscribe button so that you stay up to date on all our content.